Hi all! This video is a tutorial showing how to add portraits to the Quillscript dialog box. Here we have a basic setup. It was made using the Quillscript sample project, where I added some portraits for the characters Alice and Bob. You can see that Alice has 3 portraits and Bob has 2 portraits. This is just a simple setup for the sake of this tutorial. Here's the sample script that we will use in this video. When we launch the game, you can see that Alice talks to Bob and he runs the sample script, as expected. But this is not what we want. What we are going to do is replace these expressions that are in text form with visual expressions. We will place a portrait of the character with this expression as shown here. The first thing we need to do is create a new dialog box that we can customize. So here I'm going to create a custom Quillscript dialog box. When it asks if we want to copy the default box, we say yes. And we give it a name. The first thing we are going to do is modify the appearance of this dialog box to make it a little more appropriate for portraits and have a unique style. I want to change its color first, and I want to use round edges. Let's remove the background color from this one, setting 100% transparent. And now in the text box component, let's override the default text font and color. Here to see the engine fonts, just enable Show Engine Content in Settings. Let's use Roboto. And here enter the desired size. In this case, 256 by 256. Let's zoom in just to position it exactly where we want it. Now we will replace this square with the character's portrait. Now let's go here to the dialog box and notice that here we have the last action of the play event, which is to add to the viewport. In this case, we want to do one last action before adding to the viewport. In this position, we will find and set the character's portrait. Note that in the portraits, both Alice and Bob have a portrait called idle, which is their default state when they are talking. And this is the portrait we want to appear whenever we don't specify an emotion, such as shy. To do this, we'll start first with a sequencer. And let's collapse these nodes for better organization. Let's name it Display Portrait. And this is where we will begin our work. Going back to the dialog box, let's just combine it with Edit Viewport, and now we can work to show our portrait. The first thing we're going to do is show the idle portrait. To do this, just get the asset register, and we will get the asset along the way. And this is where the trick is. Let's build the path. Let's start with the append string. That will be the path format. And here is just a little bit of the engine pattern. If you notice, we are inside a folder called Portraits. Inside the Content folder, so here we take the asset. This is in fact the image. Cast to texture 2D right here. And so we have idle. Go to Project Settings, Quillscript, Script Settings, Portrait Dialog Box. As you can see, we already have the character's portrait appearing, Bob's portrait and Alice's portrait, both idle portraits. Now let's replace it with portraits with expressions. Note that here, Alice is surprised. And we have here, in Alice's folder, an image of her surprised. What we're going to do is change the way we find the portrait. We're going to turn this here into a new function. Let's call it Get Portrait. Now let's copy this and put it here. Here, we will take the portrait in case there is an emotion. In this case, we need to modify how this is formed. Let's add some more pins here. However, at this point, we put a slash, and here we put the name of the image with the emotion. To pass the expressions from script, it's actually very simple. This is clearly a job for Quillscript tags. Let's use a tag and call it surprised. Here where Bob is hesitant, let's call it shy. And here where she is apprehensive, let's call it afraid. We save and return to our blueprint. So we need to get the tags. Remember that tags are stored in the tags variable. Let's check each tag we have in the variable, looking for all possible expressions. But note that after obtaining the portrait, it will replace it with idle anyway. In this case, we will check whether a portrait was obtained. We will go here to the function and organize it, and we will ask it to return if there was a portrait found. If the portrait was found, return true. If the portrait was not found, return false. Coming back here, we will create a new variable with the same name and set it equal to the result. And here, we will check this variable where we will only set portrait idle if no other portrait has been found. Oops, a small correction. Actually, we're going to show the portrait idle when it doesn't find any portraits. And one last modification. Whenever we enter this function, the portrait must be reset to its false state. So when we go to the game and press play, notice that the portrait appears and at this point in script. Alice is surprised. Then they returns to its normal state as expected. Here we have shy Bob. He goes back to normal. And she is apprehensive about this. We can even remove these specifications. This is just one of the many ways you can use to add portraits to your dialog boxes. It all depends on the UI design, your project's architecture, and how things are organized. We used a simple organization in folders, but you can use other forms of organization, other ways of using tags, and so on. Bye.